The chamber was built to intimidate. That was the only honest explanation for its design. 14 kilometers wide, carved from the living stone of a dead moon, the Grand Conclave Hall of Veyron Prime had hosted the judgments of 400 civilizations over the course of 6,000 years. Its curved ceiling was embedded with bioluminescent organisms from 17 different star systems, casting a soft, perpetual twilight that made every delegate look like a god or a ghost. Ambassador Zara Kesslin stood at the center platform alone. She was 39 years old, brown-skinned, with short-cropped silver hair that she had earned honestly from a decade of interstellar diplomatic work. She wore Earth's formal colors, deep navy and gold, and she kept her hands folded behind her back, exactly as her mentor, the late Ambassador Doru Vanek, had taught her. When they try to make you feel small, he had said, take up more room. Around her, in ascending tiers that stretched upward like the inside of a cathedral, sat the representatives of the 42-member civilizations of the Galactic Council. The Tharvox delegates had 6 arms and eyes like polished obsidian. The Sen Collective manifested as a shimmering cloud of synchronized particles behind a glass partition. The ancient Ulkareth, who had been spacefaring for 50,000 years, appeared as robed pillars of slow-moving plasma. At the apex of the hall sat High Arbiter Sorvin Del, a Veronite, tall and pale as bone, with elongated fingers that tapped the edge of his resonance desk with quiet authority. Ambassador Kesslin, Sorvin Del said, his voice amplified and translated simultaneously into 312 languages, you have heard the charges. I have, Zara said. The Galactic Council, after deliberation spanning 14 of your Earth months, has reached a unanimous verdict. He paused. The bioluminescent ceiling pulsed. The species known as Homo sapiens, humanity, is hereby classified as a Tier 0 hazard entity. By the authority of the Conclave Charter, Article 91, Earth and all human-occupied territories within 6 light-years are formally banished from the Galactic Cooperative. All trade, communication and transit rights are revoked. Any human vessel found beyond the 6 light-year quarantine boundary after the grace period of 30 standard days will be considered hostile. The chamber was silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then Zara spoke. High Arbiter, she said, her voice steady as a ship's hull in vacuum, with respect, you have made a mistake. A ripple of translated murmurs moved through the tiers. The Tharvox delegate, whose name translated roughly as Vakresh 7, clicked its mandibles, and what Zara had learned was the equivalent of an offended gasp. Sorvin Del's pale fingers stopped tapping. The evidence presented, he said carefully, is not in dispute. The evidence is real, Zara agreed. The interpretation is wrong. She reached into her jacket and withdrew a small data crystal, standard galactic format, pre-approved for use in this chamber. She held it up. 7 hours ago I received this transmission from Earth. I have been attempting to have it entered into the record for 6 hours. Your clerks refused it on procedural grounds. She let that land. Before this verdict is formalized, I am requesting, officially on record, that this transmission be played. Sorvin Del looked at her for a long moment. Behind him the Ulkareth delegate flickered. Play it, the High Arbiter said finally. The data crystal projected its contents into the center of the hall, visible from every tier. What appeared was not a government official. It was not a diplomat or a general. It was Dr. Neka Oduya, a theoretical physicist from Lagos, Earth, 44 years old, sitting in what appeared to be a university laboratory cluttered with equations and empty coffee cups. She looked directly into the recorder with calm, tired eyes. Hello, she said. I am speaking to whoever is watching this at the council. My name is Dr. Neka Oduya. I work in Xenowave Field Dynamics at the University of Lagos. I know what you believe we did. I know why you are afraid of us. She paused and pushed her glasses up. You are afraid because 4 months ago humanity accidentally activated a Class 7 Xenowave pulse that disrupted the Orith corridor, and you believe it was a weapons test. She leaned forward. It was not. It was an accident caused by a miscalibrated resonance array, which we have now corrected, and in correcting it, we discovered something your own physicists have not yet found. She held up a data chip. A stable Xenowave suppression method. One that could protect every inhabited system in the galaxy from Class 7 pulses, including the ones occurring naturally near the Varith Nebula, which your models predict will reach inhabited space in approximately 40 years. The chamber was silent. A different kind of silence than before. We made a mistake, Neka Oduya said plainly. We are sorry for the disruption to the Orith corridor. But banishing Earth does not solve your Xenowave problem. It just means you will solve it 40 years slower, Or not at all. She looked directly at the camera. We would like to help. That is what we do. The projection ended. Zara Kesslin stood in the center of the hall and watched the council. She watched the Tharvox delegate lean toward its neighbor. She watched the Sen Collective's particle cloud tighten into a smaller, denser formation, the equivalent, she had been told, of intense focus. She watched Sorvindel's fingers begin tapping again, slowly. Ambassador, the High Arbiter said at last, this transmission will require verification. Of course, Zara said. I have taken the liberty of providing Dr. Oduya's full research dataset alongside it. All 47,000 pages. Also pre-formatted in Galactic Standard. She allowed herself a small, professional smile. We have had 14 months to prepare. Sorvindel studied her. The verdict, he said carefully, will be suspended. Pending verification. Thank you, Zara said. As she turned to walk back to the Earth delegation's alcove, she passed within 3 meters of the Ulkareth delegate. It was the oldest sentient being in the hall, possibly one of the oldest in the galaxy. It had seen empires rise and collapse. It had watched species burn themselves out in wars that lasted centuries. As Zara passed, it spoke, not through the translation system but directly, in a low resonance that she felt more than heard. Its words translated in her earpiece a half-second later. You were prepared for banishment, it said. It was not a question. Yes, she said quietly. And if the verdict had not been suspended? Zara kept walking. Then, she said, we would have built our own cooperative. She heard, behind her, something that might, in a 50,000-year-old being of slow plasma, have been a laugh. Commander Tobias had been standing at the bridge viewport for 6 hours when the Tharvox patrol fleet arrived. The ESV Meridian Cross was a survey-class vessel, not a warship. Its hull was designed for extended deep space mapping, its weapons limited to point defense systems meant for debris fields and micrometeorites. It carried a crew of 81. It was, by every measurable standard, not a ship that should be in a standoff with 24 Tharvox gunboats. And yet, they are holding at 400 kilometers, said Chief Navigator Prida Solano from her station, her voice professionally flat in the way that meant she was working hard not to sound scared. Still broadcasting the quarantine signal? Tobias asked. On all channels. Including the emergency humanitarian band. She paused. They know we can hear them. Tobias was 46, compact and broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that had spent too many years squinting at star maps. He had commanded the Meridian Cross for 11 years. He had navigated asteroid storms, survived a Cascade reactor failure near the Helios belt, and once talked a mutinous junior officer down from a terrible decision with nothing but a cup of bad coffee and 20 minutes of honest conversation. He had not, until this morning, had a weapons lock painted on his hull by 24 ships. What is our position relative to the boundary? He asked. We are inside, said Solano. Technically. By about 3 light minutes. And the colony transport? Lieutenant Deo Ferreira, young, 26, built like someone who had grown up in low gravity, pulled up the secondary display. The Hearthstone is still running dark. They do not know about the verdict. They left before the announcement. They are on approach for Kepler Station. He looked at Tobias. 412 colonists, sir. Families. The youngest passenger is 7 weeks old. Tobias turned back to the viewport. The Tharvox gunboats were remarkable pieces of engineering, elongated and angular, each one trailing the soft amber bioluminescence that Tharvox ships used for navigation signaling. Beautiful in a cold way. Like a very sharp knife was beautiful. Open a channel to their lead vessel, Tobias said. Sir, Solano started. I know, he said. Open it anyway. A moment later, the main screen filled with the visual feed from the Tharvox flagship. The commander on the other end was a young Tharvox, younger than Tobias expected given the rank indicators, with all 6 arms folded in the posture that meant formal authority. Its obsidian eyes were unreadable. Human vessel, it said, translated through the ship's system with a slight metallic edge. You are in violation of Galactic Council Quarantine Order 779. You will cease all movement and prepare for inspection and detainment. Commander, Tobias said, I am aware of the quarantine order. I am also aware that it was issued 14 hours ago and that the colony transport behind me has been in transit for 3 weeks. They have no knowledge of the order and no ability to comply with it in their current configuration. I am requesting a 24-hour humanitarian window to warn them off and coordinate their return. The Tharvox commander was silent for 3 seconds, a long time in interstellar diplomacy. The order is absolute, it said finally. No exceptions. Tobias nodded slowly. I understand. I want to make sure you understand something in return. He kept his voice calm. That transport carries 412 human beings, including children and infants. If you fire on it or attempt to forcibly detain it, every human being alive will learn exactly what happened here in detail forever. And we have very long memories. He paused. I'm not threatening you. I am informing you. There is a difference. The Tharvox commander's 6 arms shifted slightly, a micro-expression that Tobias did not know how to read. What is your proposal? It asked. Tobias exhaled slowly. Let me break their communication silence. Give them the order. Give them time to turn around. No one boards my ship, no one detains my crew, and I will escort the Hearthstone back across the boundary line personally. You have my word as the commanding officer of this vessel. Another silence. You have 4 hours, the Tharvox commander said. I need 8. 6. Done. Tobias cut the channel before the Tharvox commander could change its mind. Sir, said Ferreira quietly, they still have a weapons lock on us. I know. If this does not work. Then it does not work, Tobias said. Get me a tight beam to the Hearthstone. And get Dr. Vasquez up here. She speaks 7 languages including 2 Tharvox dialects, and I want someone ready to translate anything the patrol fleet broadcasts that our system might miss. Yes, sir. He turned back to the viewport. 24 gunboats holding at 400 kilometers. Beyond them stars. Beyond the stars, somewhere, the council chamber on Veyron Prime, where Zara Kesslin was either winning or losing an argument that would define the next century of human history. Tobias had met Zara once, briefly, at an Earth diplomatic reception 7 years ago. He remembered thinking she was exactly the kind of person you wanted arguing on your behalf. He hoped she was arguing very well right now. The hours passed in the peculiar suspended tension of a standoff, everything too quiet, too still, every crew member moving with the careful deliberateness of people who understood that the smallest provocation could shift the entire equation. Prida Solano ran quiet diagnostics on the navigation systems. Deo Ferreira reviewed the Hearthstone's last known trajectory 17 times. Dr. Vasquez, who was 51 and had spent 30 years in xenolinguistics, sat at the auxiliary communication station and listened to every frequency the Tharvox patrol fleet was broadcasting, her stylus moving steadily across her notepad. At hour 3 the Hearthstone responded to the tight beam. Its captain, a woman named Adiz Nwosu who Tobias had never met, came on the channel with the composed, immediate professionalism of someone who had been doing this long enough to take bad news without letting it break her stride. Understood, she said, when Tobias had explained the situation in 30 seconds flat. We will begin reverse deceleration immediately. Estimated crossing of the boundary line in 5 hours 20 minutes. You have time, Tobias said. We negotiated 6. There was a brief pause on the channel. Then, Commander 1. My passengers are going to ask me questions I do not have answers to. What do I tell them? Tobias thought for a moment. Tell them the situation is being handled, he said. Tell them Earth's ambassador is at the council right now. Tell them we are going home, and when we go home, we are going home to a planet that just reminded the galaxy what we are made of. Another pause. Yes, sir, said Captain Nwosu. That will do. The channel closed. Tight beam to Hearthstone is ready, sir, Solano said. Good. Tobias straightened. Let us bring them home. The night Dr. Neka Oduya finished her proof, she was the only person awake in the building. It was 3:47 a.m. local time. The Lagos Xenophysics Institute was a sprawling complex of glass and reinforced concrete on the edge of the city's bay, and at this hour it was quiet enough that she could hear the ocean. She had been working for 19 consecutive hours. Her glasses were smudged. Her 4th cup of coffee had gone cold 2 hours ago and she had been drinking it anyway out of principle. On the whiteboard behind her, an actual physical whiteboard, her one indulgence in an otherwise entirely digital workspace, were 47 equations. They had taken her 11 months to derive and 2 days to verify. They proved that xenowave energy, previously considered impossible to suppress without destroying the wave entirely, could be redirected through a controlled resonance inversion. More importantly, they proved that the Meridian Array, the research installation that had accidentally produced Earth's Class 7 pulse 4 months ago, could be reconfigured to create a suppression field. Not just for one pulse. For the ongoing natural pulses predicted to emerge from the Varith Nebula over the next 40 years. The ones that the Galactic Council's own models indicated could sterilize 17 inhabited systems. The ones that no one in the galaxy currently knew how to stop. NECA knew this because she had spent the last 3 months quietly accessing every piece of publicly available galactic scientific literature on xenowave dynamics. 46,000 papers. Reading them had required learning to parse 3 alien mathematical notation systems, which she had done with the help of her postdoctoral student, Kieran Achterberg, and a translation AI that Kieran had modified to handle theoretical physics. Kieran was 29, Dutch Nigerian, and possessed of the kind of tireless intellectual energy that made NECA feel old even though she was only 15 years his senior. He had gone home at 11 p.m. only because she had essentially ordered him to. Her communicator lit up. It was Kieran. "You are still there?" he said. It was not a question. "Finished?" she said. Pause. "The full proof. All 47 steps. Verified twice." She looked at the whiteboard. "It works, Kieran. I know it works." She heard him breathe. "The council voted tonight. Ambassador Kesslin got the verdict suspended. The transmission worked. But it is only suspended. They are running verification on your dataset now. Then they will confirm it," NECA said quietly. "The math is the math. The concern," Kieran said carefully, "is that the council's own physicists might not want to confirm it. If a human solves a problem they have been working on for decades." He left the implication hanging. NECA had thought about this. She had thought about it a great deal over the last month, actually, during the long hours between calculations when her brain needed to rest but could not quite manage it. "I know," she said. "That is why I have already sent copies of the full proof to 41 independent researchers across 9 different galactic civilizations, including 4 Ulcarith physicists, who have a reputation for being incorruptible." She paused. "I sent them 2 hours ago." Silence. "Dr. Oduya," Kieran said at last, "that was either the most brilliant or the most reckless thing you have done in your career." "I have thought about it," she said, "and I believe it is both." She heard him laugh, a short, exhausted, genuine laugh that made her smile. "Go to sleep," she said. "Come in at 7. We need to prepare for when the council contacts us because they will contact us, and we should probably be awake and coherent." "What if they do not?" Kieran asked. "What if they reject it anyway?" NECA looked at her whiteboard. 47 equations. 11 months of work. A solution to a problem that would kill billions of people in 40 years if no one solved it. "Then the independent researchers still have it," she said. "And the independent researchers will publish it. And the populations of those 17 systems will hear about it. And the people of those worlds will ask their governments why this solution was buried." She capped her marker. "Science does not care about politics, Kieran. It just waits." She ended the call and sat for a long moment in the quiet. Outside the window, Lagos was beginning its slow pre-dawn awakening, the first lights of early vendors and delivery workers, the distant sound of the harbor. In 6 hours, this city of 20 million people would be fully, brilliantly alive. In 14 hours, this city would learn whether it was going to be quarantined from the rest of the galaxy for an indeterminate future. And in some distant conference room on Veyron Prime, 40 alien scientists were opening a dataset that would either confirm her work or lie about it. NECA had not slept properly in 3 weeks. She had eaten most of her meals at this desk. She had cancelled 2 conferences for interviews and a long overdue visit to her mother in Enugu. She had, in the quiet honesty of 4 a.m., asked herself several times whether any of this would actually matter. And she had concluded each time that it had to matter, because the alternative was that it did not, and that was not an acceptable conclusion to operate from. She picked up her cold coffee, drank the last of it, and began writing the cover letter she would send to the Galactic Council directly. She wrote it in 6 languages, including the formal Veronite script she had been learning since the crisis began. It was 4 pages long. It began, "We are not asking for your forgiveness. We are offering you a solution." And it ended, "We have made mistakes. So have you. The difference is that we are trying to fix ours. We hope, in time, that you will see the value in that distinction." She read it once, corrected 2 grammatical errors in the Veronite section, and sent it. Then Dr. NECA Oduya, who had just written the most important scientific document in human history, put her head down on her desk and fell asleep to the sound of the Lagos harbor and the very distant, indifferent stars. The Ulcarith did not have a word for young. They had words that translated approximately as recently formed, early stage, and pre-complexity, but these carried no negative connotations. The Ulcarith had been old for so long that they had lost the ability to view youth as a flaw. It was simply a condition like temperature or pressure, a point on a continuum. Archivist Veluin of the Third Memory had existed for approximately 9,000 years. She was not, by Ulkareth standards, particularly old. She was, however, considered among the best living practitioners of what her kind called pattern reading, the ability to examine the developmental arc of a civilization and determine, with some reliability, what it would become. She had been assigned to the human question the moment it had become a question. The human question had first come to Ulkareth attention not 4 months ago, when the Meridian Array accident occurred, but 41 years ago, when the first human radio signals, already ancient by the time they arrived, had been captured by Ulkareth deep space listening posts. The signals had been analyzed, catalogued, and flagged for long-term monitoring under a standard procedure used for any pre-contact civilization. But Veluin had been assigned to the file personally because of one anomaly. The signals were not consistent. Most civilizations in their pre-contact period broadcast signals that followed recognizable patterns, gradual technological development, stable cultural themes, predictable linguistic drift. The Ulkareth had observed enough civilizations to know the shape of a species' growth curve as well as a physician knows a patient's heartbeat. Humanity's signal was not a curve. It was a series of violent, lurching discontinuities, wars and silences, explosions of technology followed by apparent collapse. Languages that died and were reborn, philosophies that contradicted each other across centuries within the same civilization. It looked, to every standard analytical model, like the signal of a species tearing itself apart. And yet they kept broadcasting. Veluin had spent 40 years trying to understand this. She was in her archive chamber on Saravan, a world of slow rivers and amber light, when she received Dr. Oduya's proof. She had been one of the 41 independent researchers who had received it at 1:47 a.m. Lagos time. She read it carefully, which for an Ulkareth of her experience meant reading it 3 times in rapid succession while cross-referencing it against her own theoretical models. It was correct. Not approximately correct. Not directionally correct. Exactly, precisely, rigorously correct. And it extended beyond what she had managed to derive in 30 years of dedicated work on the Xenowave problem. Veluin sat with this for a long time. Outside her window, the amber river of Saravan moved with its customary unhurried patience. A world that had seen 100,000 years of civilization had learned not to hurry over things. But Veluin found, for the first time in perhaps a century, that she wanted to move quickly. She contacted her colleague Ferran of the Sixth, who was both older and more politically connected than she was. "You have read the human paper," she said. It was not a question. "Yes," said Ferran, whose voice resonated at a lower frequency, a sign of deep thought. "I have confirmed the derivations independently. Steps 12 through 19 are particularly elegant. The Council's physicists will try to delay confirmation," Veluin said. "Some of them. Others will be honest." Ferran paused. "The more interesting question is what we do." "We confirm it publicly," Veluin said. "That is what scientists do." "We confirm it publicly," Ferran agreed. "But I mean, what do we do about the humans?" Veluin considered this. In 9,000 years of existence she had seen many civilizations fail. She had seen species who were brilliant and cruel who had burned themselves out in a century. She had seen patient, cooperative species who had flourished for millennia and then grown so comfortable that they quietly stopped developing. She had seen the Galactic Council make the right decision and the wrong decision with nearly equal frequency, and she had long since lost any faith in the Council as a reliable judge of potential. What she had not seen, in 9,000 years, was a civilization that made mistakes the way humanity made mistakes. Most species, when they damaged something, tried to hide it. Cover it up, minimize it, shift the blame to external forces. This was nearly universal. Veluin had observed it so consistently that she had long since classified it as a fundamental behavioral constant. Humanity had sent their best scientists to explain the accident, take responsibility for it clearly, and then immediately offer a solution to a larger problem that they had no personal stake in solving. Humanity's ambassador had stood in the most powerful chamber in the galaxy and said, "You have made a mistake," and then had stayed to prove it. A survey commander with no warship had negotiated a humanitarian window from 24 gunboats with nothing but an honest argument about consequences and a willingness to be held to his word. These were not the behaviors of a species that was hiding. These were the behaviors of a species that was paying attention and had decided, at every level, to respond to crisis with transparency. "I want to access the archive on first contact protocols," Veluin said. "Specifically, the clause regarding civilizations that demonstrate what the founders called accelerated ethical development." Ferran was quiet for a moment. That clause has not been invoked in 400 years. No, Veluan said. But then, this situation has not come up in 400 years. She was already moving toward her archive terminal. The protocol was old, written in an archaic form of Ulkareth script that even she had to parse carefully. It had been invoked exactly twice in galactic history. The first time it had been used to fast-track the Varanites to full council membership, the same Varanites who now ran the council. The second time, it had been used to protect a small aquatic civilization on the edge of the Varith Nebula, a civilization that was now a founding member of the Tharvox Accord. Veluan read the protocol in full. Then she began drafting a formal request for its third invocation, addressed directly to Sorvindel at the Grand Conclave Hall. In the message she wrote, "I have studied humanity for 41 years. I have observed their wars and their recoveries, their cruelties and their compassions, their extraordinary capacity for both destruction and repair. What I have never before observed, in 9,000 years of existence, is a civilization that looks at its own worst moment and responds not with denial, but with science." She attached the full confirmation of Dr. Oduya's Xenowave proof, along with Farron's independent verification. Then she attached something else, her own 41 years of observational notes on humanity. Every war and reconstruction. Every atrocity and memorial. Every time they had broken something and spent the next generation trying, imperfectly, to repair it. Every time they had encountered a problem larger than themselves and responded by staying awake until they understood it. She sent it all. Then she went to the window and watched the amber river below her chamber move slowly, carrying light from somewhere distant toward somewhere it had not yet been, and she thought about what it meant to be young in a very old galaxy, and whether youth was, perhaps, exactly what the galaxy currently needed. The second session of the Earth banishment hearing began 17 hours after the first. Zara Kesslin had slept for 4 of those hours, showered, eaten a meal she could not taste, and returned to the Grand Conclave Hall wearing the same colors. She stood at the center platform again and she waited. The hall was different this time. More crowded, delegates who had not attended the first session had come for the second. Word had spread through the diplomatic channels about the Xenowave proof, about the Ulkareth endorsement, about the tight beam standoff at the Proxima boundary zone, where a human survey commander had negotiated a 6-hour humanitarian window and used it to turn a colony transport around without a single shot fired. Zara had read Commander Wen's report twice. She wished she could thank him in person. High Arbiter Sorvindel took his seat at the apex of the hall. His face, pale and long and carefully unreadable, gave nothing away. "This session," he said, "will address the verification findings regarding the Xenowave suppression research submitted by Dr. Neka Oduya of Earth, and the formal statement submitted by Archivist Veluan of the Third Memory of the Ulkareth Archive on Saravan." He paused. "The Council's independent verification team has confirmed, by a vote of 9 to 1, that Dr. Oduya's Xenowave suppression proof is mathematically valid and practically implementable using existing galactic technology. The one dissenting verifier has lodged a procedural objection rather than a scientific one, which the Council's Rules Committee has categorized as non-substantive." Another pause. "Archivist Veluan has formally invoked the Accelerated Ethical Development Protocol on behalf of humanity. This protocol, last used 400 years ago, supersedes pending banishment orders and requires a full council vote rather than a tribunal verdict." The hall murmured. Zara kept her expression neutral. "The vote," Sorvindel said, "will proceed now." In Lagos, Earth, Dr. Neka Oduya was awake, showered, and sitting at her desk with Kieran Achterberg beside her, watching the council feed on a secure diplomatic channel. She was holding a cup of actual hot coffee. Her whiteboard was still behind her, 47 equations still intact. She had answered 12 requests for interviews since 7 a.m. She had given none of them. "They are voting," Kieran said quietly. "I know." She watched the board display in the corner of the feed. 42 civilizations. 42 votes. The standard required for a reversed verdict was 2/3, 28 votes. "Whatever happens," Kieran said, "you should know, the independent researchers have already begun citing the proof. 3 papers have gone up in the last 6 hours building on your work. They cannot unpublish that." "I know," she said again. She said it gently, not dismissively. "But I would still prefer they do not exile us." The first vote came in. The Sen Collective, a civilization of distributed intelligence who communicated in synchronized particle patterns. Their vote registered as in favor of reversal. The second, the Tharvox delegate whose confrontation with Commander One at the Proxima boundary was surely fresh in memory. A long pause. Then, in favor. On the Meridian Cross, Commander Tobias was watching the same feed on the bridge screen. His crew was gathered, not at their stations, just present, standing in clusters watching. Prida Solano had her arms crossed. Lieutenant Ferreira was very still. The Hearthstone had crossed back over the boundary line 11 hours ago. Its passengers had been told the news en route. Tobias had received a brief transmission from Captain Nwosu, a single sentence, "Thank you for finding us." He watched the votes accumulate on the board. 20, 23, 26, 27. One more, Solano said quietly. The 28th vote came from a civilization Tobias did not recognize, a species called the Verathul from a binary star system near the Kessler Arm, who had been spacefaring for only 200 years and had joined the Council 20 years ago. A young civilization by galactic standards. Their delegate was the smallest being in the hall, roughly humanoid, covered in iridescent scales, currently standing on the speaking platform with a posture that suggested extraordinary effort. The Verathul, it said in a voice that the translation system rendered as clear and slightly formal, vote in favor of reversal. We do so because we remember what it was like to be new. We do so because we believe that the measure of a civilization is not whether it makes mistakes. We have made many, but what it does when the mistake is discovered. It paused. The humans discovered their mistake. They said so. They fixed it. And then they stayed to fix something larger. Another pause. We would like one day to be that kind of civilization. 28. The vote continued. Final count. 31 in favor of reversal, 9 against, 2 abstentions. The verdict was reversed. In the Grand Conclave Hall, Sorvindel looked down at Zara Kesslin for a long moment. "Ambassador," he said, "the banishment order against humanity is formally revoked. Earth and all human-occupied territories retain their status within the Galactic Cooperative, subject to the standard review process over the next 3 years." He paused once more, and in that pause something shifted in his expression. Something small and precise that Zara had learned over 10 years of diplomatic work to read carefully. "Additionally," he said, "the Council would like to formally request a joint working group with Earth researchers on the Xenowave suppression implementation. The Varith Nebula timeline leaves us with approximately 39 years. 38 years, 11 months and about 4 days, Zara said. Dr. Oduya was very precise. For the first time in this hearing, possibly for the first time in a very long time, High Arbiter Sorvindel smiled. "Indeed," he said. In Lagos, Neka Oduya watched the final vote register and felt something unclench in her chest that had been clenched, she realized, for 4 months. Kieran said her name softly and she turned and saw that he was crying, not in sadness, just in that particular kind of relief that is too large for any other expression. "Go home," she told him. "Tell your family." "What about you?" he asked. Neka looked at her whiteboard. 47 equations. The work that had started accidentally with a miscalibrated resonance array and a lot of sleepless nights and had ended, or really begun, here. "I am going to start on the implementation framework," she said. "We have 38 years and 11 months, approximately." Kieran laughed. On the Meridian Cross, Tobias stood at the viewport for a long time after the feed ended. The stars outside were exactly the same as they had been an hour ago. The Tharvox gunboats had departed at the announcement of the council vote. The space around his ship was empty and quiet and very, very large. "Orders, sir?" Solano asked. Tobias thought for a moment. "Set a course for Kepler Station," he said. "We were supposed to be mapping the Karev drift. Let us go do our jobs." "Yes, sir." The ESV Meridian Cross turned slowly in the dark, and pointed itself toward the stars it had come to explore, and went. That was what humanity did. Even when the galaxy told them to stop, they had kept building, kept learning, kept showing up with solutions to problems that were not even theirs to solve. They had looked at banishment and answered it with physics. They had faced 24 gunboats with honesty. They had stayed awake through the night and written the hardest proof they had ever written and sent it freely to 41 strangers. They were young by galactic standards, barely a heartbeat old. But they were the kind of young that learned fast. And the galaxy, slowly, was beginning to understand what that meant.